So, Jay, what are your initial thoughts on this third episode from the third season entitled The Convert?
When I started watching it, Tom, I was very confused because I was at this new world that looked like Ridley Scott directed it with big billboards and ice creams that had lights in them and people running and jumping from subway trains. So I'm like, where's Mando? Where's Bo Katan? What are we doing? And then suddenly I got really engrossed in this whole setup and how they were taking the doctor there, who's Dr. Pershing, and trying to get him to continue his cloning experiments. And there is one person, is it Ilya Kane? Is that her name?
That is her name.
Okay. And she is there. The guy is just getting set up and it's all for no good. But there's some of these scenes that's very liberating when they're jumping through the subway cars. And you're almost hoping that there'll be something good to come of this. But at the end of the episode, that Dr. Pershing will not fare very well.
All well said and all correct. This episode took a very different plot turn. We leave Darjin, we leave Grogu, we leave Kobatan, and we move to the New Republic. And I actually thought more about George Orwell in 1984 for the dystopian part, although we're supposed to be in the New Republic, the very bellwether of goodness for the galaxy. I'm beginning to wonder maybe the Empire wasn't so bad. But we're at a pretty cool planet. It's a great science fiction in terms of visual. I think there's a holographic zoo for those who don't want to get their hands dirty or smell bad things or keep animals in cages. And we're introduced to former Imperial soldiers, scientists, and others who have been re-educated and then essentially pardoned to go back into society as part of the New Republic. And the scientist, we have seen him in seasons 1 and 2. We saw him a little bit in his role in his work in genetic cloning. And that led to the story of why they were trying to get Grogu and why he is being chased so much. But yes, he is pretty clearly going to be set up. For being a scientist, he may be very smart, but he's very dumb. And we get I thought a pretty cool set of scenes. I enjoyed going out to see the I guess it's the Starship junkyard. That was pretty cool. And we did learn something incredibly important in this episode, Jay, and it was almost buried because there was a plot hole in the Star Wars movie universe between what is now called Episode 6, the third of the original Lucas, and then the Episode 7, which started the 21st century versions of the movies. And that plot hole was, where did the First Republic come from? And now we know, and what we found out was that the New Republic didn't eliminate essentially the former Empire structures, and they left lots of physical things laying around like starships and like weapons. And it didn't mean you have to execute everybody, but you have to do a little bit better job than just declare victory and that everyone is now a good citizen, because some of these people were not good citizens. So that was probably the biggest thing about this. This episode gave us that answer to where the First Republic came from that we saw in episodes 7, 8, and 9. But this one was almost dystopian science fiction to me. And of course, it ended with what we would have called in the 50s, 60s, and 70s a honey trap, where the scientist was snared in by Ilya Kane. And I have to do a spoiler alert, Ms. Kane may not be what she sees going forward. That part was interesting. The cloning part, we get a little more about that. But this one went in a very different direction that's going to set up conflict and resolution through the rest of the series. Did this episode work for you, or was it too different?
I think in retrospect, it worked when it started. I could see a lot of tropes that were going to be played, and I wanted to see how it's going to turn out. I think in the end result, like you said, it plugs a couple story gaps. And I'm happy that we spent a whole episode with these characters getting to know them. And then we're going to see some of them a little bit on. So I think, again, we're getting little bits of clues. There's certain planets that we visit in the original trilogy, other places we've gone. Again, to kudos to Happy, the chauffeur driver, he still keeps building on the canon and keeping it moving forward. So my initial thumbs down got turned to a thumbs up.
We did have some with Darjin, Bo-Katan, and Grogu. We had an incredible fight, really cool fight scene in space with some unknown TIE fighters, I guess from the New Republic. And then we had at the end, Darjin is formally reintroduced into the Brotherhood of the Mandalorians by the Creed, I should say, the armorer who pronounces that he has visited the living waters and bathed in them, and he has brought some water back to be proof and tested. And Bo-Katan testified that she was present and pulled him from the living waters. So the armorer ascertains Darjin's telling the truth and declares him to be redeemed. So he's now formally been redeemed. And this episode ends with a symbol or a picture of the mythosaur that we talked about in the prior episode up on the wall, which we now know why Bo-Katan had to see that and why it had to be mentioned even so briefly in episode The Convert, the second episode of season 3. So it all ties together, and it turns out the mythosaur was a symbol that even today, or at least at the time of this episode took place, that the Mandalorians still revered and worshipped. And it certainly sets up Bo-Katan, I think, going forward to at least position herself to reestablish her claim as the last queen or royal family member of the Mandalorians.
I have a question without an answer, so I'm going to rely upon you. When we see this religious cult of Mandalore, who are they supposed to be? Is there somebody in the real world that is being paid homage to? Or why do we think the religion of Mandalore exists, and what's it in reaction to?
I thought it was just a part of the tradition of the Mandalorians that they were keeping alive while they lived in exile across the galaxy, literally. And it was something that they were keeping the home fire burning if they ever did or were able to get back to Mandalore or reestablish themselves as a people on another planet.
Okay. I just thought I'm missing something because it's pretty well thought out, and you have all those in Peace Be With You and the cadence of religion. So I thought you might have some light to shed, Tom, but thank you. Appreciate it.
I think when a people wander, Jay, they keep their religion very near and dear to their heart. They practice it, and when they can return to their homeland and fully in the blossom of that, reestablish their religion, my sense is that's what they do.
I think you might be right.
All right. I hope our listeners, Jay, will join us again for our next episode, which will be episode 4 of season 3, The Foundling. This is Tom Fox.
And Jay Rosen.